Right, we're now at the Fenton's Crescent entrance to the woods with Ham Lane on the left, and these two trees here, the oak on the right and the beech on the left, are quite old trees in an old hedgerow. Both of these trees are great habitats for bats and a whole load of invertebrates and birds, and quite a large spread on the oak tree that you can see is characteristic of a tree that's grown without any other trees around it. So this tree has always been in open country without being in part of a woods, and I'll show you the difference with trees that have been in part of the woods later on. Now, these are the top of the path down. I'm now going to go down to the bottom to show you another iconic oak tree. These two trees and the one at the bottom I've recorded on the ancient tree inventory. Right, this oak tree is a hedgerow tree. It's actually still in the hedgerow where it was planted, but you can tell by the wide span of the branches that it grew up without trees surrounding it. There are trees now next to it, but these trees are much taller and much thinner because they've been growing up as individual trees and competing for the light with the big oak that's been there probably 400 to 450 years. The stream, this tree is older, it's got a load of epicormic growth coming out the bottom, lots of shoots coming out the bottom. It's typical of wetland area. Its roots really love being in the water, and it also fixes nitrogen. There's alder all the way along the banks of the stream, but you don't find it very much anywhere else in the woodland, so very much a wetland tree. We're now down by the first stream crossing from Western Mill entrance, and this is an example of not such good woodland management. These trees around here are all very tall, very thin for their age, which is probably about 30 or 40 years old, and the reason for that is that they're largely sycamore or ash which are dispersed by the wind, and we think this was left for natural regeneration, and they've all been competing with each other for light, and they've got far too tall for to be able to support themselves properly. It's only because there's other trees around that they stay up, and what should have happened is that this should have been thinned out about 20 or 30 years ago, and that would have given more light for the existing trees to have spread out a bit more and put on a bit more mass in their trunks and become stronger. And this is what happens if you plant trees all at the same time. So all our tree planting efforts at the moment are going to be potentially creating woodlands like this, where you've got very tall trees, they're all competing for the light, and the ground cover is particularly sparse because in the summer, when these trees are in full leaf, very little light gets through to the bottom of the woodland floor, so the number of plants that can grow there is very few. So not much we can do about this at the moment. We may thin out a few of these trees over the next few years selectively, just to give them a little bit more light. But the problem with doing that at the moment is if you do too many, do the number that you really want to do, then the other trees may not be able to support themselves and they start breaking and falling over. So what we're going to do now is go up to Drake's Hill and show some more recent planting, or planting rather than self-generation. You can tell the difference generally because the self-seeded trees are not in neat rows, whereas when they're planted they're largely in straight rows.